Hi, welcome to Economics 221. In this particular video, we will review Chapter 8, which is again on consumer behavior. And at the field of a survey introduction to the field of what we call behavioral economics, which is essentially a field that grew out of dissatisfaction of how well models did from the Chapter 7 variety, utility models, do at explaining consumer behavior. There are certain aspects of consumer behavior that utility theory models do not satisfactorily predict. And Chapter 8 is an overview of an entire field of microeconomics called behavioral economics. And behavioral economics is a field that focuses on experimental processes that study why it is that sometimes the model of utility theory, a model where we believe that rational economic agents maximize their self preferences subject to budget constraints, we just tend not to see that in some human behaviors in real life. So behavioral economics has come up with three main branches of situations and causes for breakdowns in rational economic behavior, and all these three facets fall under a field that actually precedes the economic study of these, and it's in psychology rather than economics that we see the root cause of behaviors that are deemed not economically rational per the utility theory model of Chapter 7. And the field of psychology that basically deals with these subjects is a field called as the cognitive bias literature. And the cognitive bias literature applied to economics has given rise to an understanding of these phenomena, which are essentially time inconsistency, sunk cost, fungibility of money, and variations in preferences. So we will study in this chapter these four items. Time inconsistency is when your preferences about the future today and your preferences about the future at that future point in time are not consistent with one another, and as a result lead to regret in decision making or lead to behaviors that you observe today that are inconsistent with stated goals or objectives. Example: I have an exam tomorrow and I need to study today so that I can do great at the exam tomorrow. That would be my preferences in the present. But I also today received some notifications in my social media streams that there's a cool movie and a cool lecture that follows the movie, and I'm really interested in it, and my friends are super excited about going, and I think I can go to that, and then when I return from that, I'll study, and then I'll still do well on the test. And so I decide to go to the movie and be with my friends because that makes me feel great. That makes me maximize my utility. My use of time is appropriate. I'll still have plenty of time to go and study later. After the activity occurs and after I return home, I find myself a little tired, and I find myself not really in the same frame of mind as I did when about the test tomorrow. Because I'm intellectually tired. I just spent a lot of intellectual energy processing that movie and the ideas during the lecture and the discussion that followed. And in commuting there and commuting back, I also got myself a little worn out physically. And so, I think I should take a shower before I start studying to sort of freshen up, and maybe heat up some coffee and drink some coffee so that I could stay up late. But I know that when I don't sleep well, I don't do well on tests. And so maybe I shouldn't sacrifice my sleep. And now I'm find myself in the situation of regretting having gone to the movie. So notice how the actual actions that I choose for the present are warping and affecting my terms of value and opportunity cost into the future. So the idea of time inconsistency and the idea of how opportunity costs vary due to preference variations over time are intertwined. And they both create a sense that I've made an irrational choice by going to the movie. When at the beginning it seemed like a fine idea to go to the movie. That's one example of how we have reasons, very, very valid, significant, substantive psychological reasons to doubt the ability of utility models that we studied in chapter 7 from being able to predict choices made by individuals as to what they consume with their time and money. Example 1. Example 2, a sunk cost example. What is a sunk cost? A sunk cost is a cost that is sunk, that is unrecoverable. Once you make it, you're stuck with it, and there's no reimbursement of that resource that you have spent on money. So within the same situation as before, I can go to a movie and a lecture and a discussion that's really interesting to me. The cover charge for that is 20 bucks. So I Venmo $20 to some account, and I get back a receipt saying, you're paid up, just show this at the entrance and you're set. I go to the event, and I find myself not being able to find the receipt that says that I already paid. And I ask them to look at the records, and then they tell me, hey, you can pay us another 20 bucks to come in, but it's your responsibility to bring the evidence that you've paid, essentially the ticket. And you don't have the ticket, you somehow misplaced it, or it's lost, your phone didn't save it, you didn't save it anywhere, it's nowhere to be found. All you see in Venmo is that you sent 20 bucks somewhere, but it doesn't really show where. And so you're a little ticked off that in order to enjoy this event, now that you're there with all your other friends, you gotta pop another 20 bucks to this. So in essence, the first $20 are a sunk cost. And if you want to go, you have to pop another $20. So sometimes you ascertain that as, wow, this event's now costing me 40. But in reality, at the time of the decision that you have to make, the second decision you have to make where you either enter or you don't for an extra 20, the opportunity cost of that decision is $20, not because you can't do anything about the other 20 that got lost. And the way to explain that from a classical economic point of view is, imagine that instead of doing all this electronic transfer of money, you stop by an ATM, you pull out, I don't know, 60, 80 bucks of cash from your account, and let's say 60, and you show up to the event. And when you show up to the event, you pay for the ticket that you want to go, and it's 20 bucks. When you pull out the cash, you see that you only have $40, not 60. It could have been that the ATM failed to give you the 60. It could have been that when you were counting the money, you dropped the 20 on the ground. It could be that the other 20 is not entirely lost, who knows, but you currently do not have that 20. So in this situation, you still are out 20 bucks, but you don't feel any injustice to paying $20 because it had nothing to do with the event. So you are more than likely to pay the $20 and go to the event than not, in spite of the fact that you are, again, $40 out. And the other 20 you might never find. So it is essentially, should be treated as a sunk cost. And it is seen as a sunk cost because the decision maker, the decision making to enter or not to enter, in your mind is more likely to be a $20 decision, not a 20 plus a 20 that you unjustifiably already paid to the event, and these people want to take you for another 20. even though contextually they're both sunk cost situations, you feel in both cases as if the decision at the margin is different. And that leads to different outcomes in the process. When experimentally you look at a survey, in scenario 1, you see 54% of people reacting like, okay, I'll buy another ticket, versus 46% saying, heck no. Whereas with scenario 2, you see an 88% of people being willing to pay the 20, and only 12% of people saying, forget the concert or the lecture or the video. The last topic of chapter 8 that introduces a conflict between the rational economic decision-making classical model of utility maximization in chapter 7 and what might lead to failures of prediction in that model is called the fungibility of money in financial decision-making. Money in one form and money in another form may not be the same kind of money. So when, let's say, for example, you have as in the PowerPoint slides, you have 2 sources of money. One source of money is you have $5,000 of lifetime savings in a bank account, and you also have $2,000 owed to a credit card that you use for transactions on a daily basis. So in effect, your net wealth is $3,000. It's $3,000 without the balance. If you use $2,000 of the $5,000 of savings to bring your credit card debt to 0, you owe $3,000. If you decide to keep the $5,000 in the bank and keep the balance at $2,000 and just make a minimal payment to the credit card company from your income, then your balance is still $3,000. So the balances look the same, but they actually are not, because $2,000 credit is not just a $2,000 debt that is not changing. The $2,000 of debt actually change over time due to the interest that you are accruing on the debt that you are carrying. And so in effect, if you look at this decision in the future, you're not going to have a wealth of $3,000. You're going to have a wealth of less than $3,000. And if you don't take that into account, you're going to make poor financial choices, because even though you think you have $3,000, you in effect have less than $3,000. But by not taking into account the interest accrual process, you may be thinking that you have $3,000 with or without the balance, when the reality is totally different. Without the balance, you have $3,000. With the balance, you have less than $3,000. And that fungibility of money, especially playing over concepts like accrual of interest due over time, makes decisions sometimes makes irrational decisions be observed by people who don't take into consideration all the factors, who may not even know about all the factors. And so this chapter is pretty interesting. This field of behavioral economics really took off in the late 1980s, early 1990s, so it's a very, very young field in economics. And you can now take a variety of courses in what are called also experimental economics, where you design experiments to pry from the experiments behaviors that are more like the ones you see in reality, rather than using predictive models that abstract from reality certain features that make it difficult to make good predictions from those fields. And I hope that this short video introducing behavioral economics plays a role in assisting you to complete your study and understanding of this chapter successfully. And I hope it carries into your exam number 3 as well as your homework for chapter 8 and your quiz for chapter 8. Take care.